Education opens doors for the gospel, bringing hope to dark places and sparking lasting change around the world. At Teach Beyond, we're reaching the nations through education.
This is Transformed and Transformational, a podcast from Teach Beyond. I'm Kian.
And I'm Heather. We're exploring how the gospel transforms us and overflows to impact classrooms, communities, and the world.
Let's jump into today's conversation. This week is a calling story, and I really love these episodes where we get to talk to a fellow Teach Beyond member and hear their story. Today we're talking with Rio Handley, who is serving out of Australia.
You know, Kian, I first met Rio when she was joining Teach Beyond and was working a little bit with our global mobilization team. And I've been so struck by Rio's heart for prayer and for really seeing people in their process of discerning what's next. You know, she really values prayer in her own life and in that process of discernment, and then interacting with people so that they can find their next step.
Rio serves as an Associate Regional Director, or ARD, of East Asia and Oceania. She'll explain more about what that entails, as well as more of the background that led to this point.
Rio has a bachelor's degree in Christian education from the Asian Seminary of Christian Ministries in the Philippines and is just completing her Master of Arts in Biblical Studies from SUM Bible College and Theological Seminary in California. She is originally from the Philippines, but now lives with her husband in Perth, Western Australia.
Let's go over to that conversation with Rio now. Hi, Rio. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me today.
Rio, we are so glad to have you here. And you live in Australia now, but you're originally from the Philippines and you've lived other places too. So we'd love to hear what your sense of home is, because sometimes home can be a complicated word. So what does that look like for you?
Yes. Well, as of the moment, of course, for now, I feel at home, especially now with my husband here in Australia. But looking back, it has been a series of home for me. Of course, I was born and raised in the Philippines, and I grew up in the Lord there in our Christian church. And for me, for the longest time in my adult life, that was home for me, my church. And I worked in the church, I served in the church for the longest time. But when the Lord called me to Indonesia, I felt like, okay, I'm leaving my home now to follow God, to follow His will. And so Indonesia became my home during that time. It was short lived though, just for 3 years, because I thought that I will be living in Indonesia for the rest of my life, but it didn't happen. And because of that, I realized that I feel at home where God has placed me. I feel at home in the at the center of his will. So, and coming here in Australia, and now with my husband, now I feel at home here already.
I love that answer. I'm so curious to hear the story about how you went to Indonesia and what you did there. And you have a history with missions. So we'll get into that really soon and what eventually led you to Teach Beyond. But before we get to that, I'm curious to hear where your current role is with Teach Beyond, just so we can kind of place you where you are currently.
Oh, okay. So I serve as an ARD, Associate Regional Director, for East Asia and Oceania. And I serve as ARD for members. I have two roles: ARD member support as well as ARD global projects. All right. So it's basically I work alongside our East Asia and Oceania team. I work closely with um, Tosca Nathan, our regional vice president for EAO, and we have a wonderful team that supports our region, that is East Asia, and for as an ARD for members. Okay, basically I provide support to our all the members that we have in the region. Join in with prayer, that's very important. So there's a whole lot of coordinating, there's a whole lot of support going on. And then for our as ARD Global Projects, I work with Open Schools, Sparrow Project, and Beyond Borders, all of which serve specific populations, the marginalized, the displaced, and the under resourced.
Rio, that's a lot of, you mentioned the word coordinating. It's a combination, right, of logistics and creating space for people to share and be heard and connected, right? So there's kind of an element of details and making sure you have the right information, but also seeing the people right in front of you. And that takes a special person to be able to kind of do both sides of that. And so that's neat that you have that role. And it's also a virtual role, right? So sometimes you're
Yes,
seeing these members
yes,
in face to face, but usually it's over a screen or over email. And so we just so appreciate how you are in that role to connect the region.
yes. I enjoy it.
Well, Rio, you've shared a little bit about what you're doing now and given us a hint at how your story has unfolded over time. But let's go way back. Can you tell us about your growing up years? Was mission something you heard talked about or saw happening in your church, your home community? What was that experience like for you?
Well, actually, well, of course, I grew up as a Catholic. I went to a Catholic school. That was my background. And when I met the Lord in high school, somebody invited me to a Pentecostal church, right? And this church is a church plant, and the senior pastor was a missionary, and they're from the States, both husband and wife from the States. They're very missional. So my eyes were really open growing up in my Christian faith. My eyes were already opened as to what missions is about. Because our senior pastor would always talk about missions in the pulpit. So I grew up, knowing that God loves the lost, and it's always preached in the pulpit. And we would hear testimonies from missionaries coming from different countries, talking about what God is doing in the nations. So for me, that was it. This is what the church is about. Church is about missions. God's people is all about missions and being called to missions.
I love that from calling from the front, the pastor encouraging you guys to be involved in missions. So I'm curious, as you heard that calling, what was your kind of first response to it? How did you start getting involved in ministry?
Okay, so I never really thought to be a missionary myself. I just love the idea, and I thought I'm called. Philippines is a mission country itself, right? I don't need to go out of the country because the Filipino people needs to be reached as well. But there was a friend of mine, because I was part of the worship team, and one of our worship leaders became a missionary. Okay, so she went to Indonesia, and so coming back, she told us about the mission trip that she'd had in Banda Aceh, and she talked about, we need to pray for this people group. We need to. I have never. This was a time I've never heard of Indonesia except for Bali. Bali is, I never heard of Banda Aceh. I never heard of the Achenese people. I thought that Indonesia is like all of it looks like Bali. So she was telling us about this Achenese people. They're very, they're very. This province is a closed Muslim province that um, they practice Sharia law. The only province that practice Sharia. So she was telling us about that. This our group, our worship team group, and she said, "Please pray because they need more people there in Banda Aceh." All right, as a good friend, of course, respond to the prayer. I started praying for the Achenese people, whom I haven't heard. That was the first time I heard about that there's an Achenese people group, right? So I started praying to God about it. And lo and behold, God started to talk to me about, during my prayer times. The simple prayers became intercession for these group. And I found myself just weeping and crying to God about these people whom I whom I haven't heard about. And it's just that the Lord was really doing something in my heart, and it came a point in time where I felt God's love in my heart. That every time I pray for them, it's as if that God loves it. God loves the Muslim. God wants, the Muslims to be reached out, especially in that area, in that province in Indonesia. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. What is this? What is this thing burning in my heart? This love, and I'm learning more about God. God's love for people. And so after a few months of praying and asking the Lord what this means, I went back to my friend and asked her, why is it that every time I pray for these people, I cry, like I feel so much compassion. And then my friend said, Rio, I really feel like God is calling you to Indonesia. So that was the beginning of it. She started talking to the pastor, we need to bring Rio to Indonesia. Da, 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 da. She actually was the one who convinced my pastor to bring me to Indonesia. So I was working then. I was working as an ESL teacher in a Korean school. And so it was really like a struggle, because there's this thing in my heart to go, and then again I'm still working, and then again, so there was a struggle then. But that was the initial um somehow calling that I've received from the Lord, that God loves the Muslims, and I need to do something about it.
Wow, that thought that I need to do something about it, that's really impactful. Rio, when you went to Indonesia, when you relocated there, I'm guessing there were things that weren't as you expected or that were challenging. I mean, you alluded to the fact that you expected to be there for the rest of your life, but it was only 3 years. How did you feel like your time in Indonesia shaped you? What were some of the things you learned from that? Well, I know that's 3 years of life right there, but what did that look like for you?
When you are in the mission field, and I was alone. Of course, I was with a team back then, but then again, I was the only Filipino. It was a group. I was with a group of missionaries, and from different countries, right? So I was single. I was the only Filipino there, and I have nothing else to hold on to but to God. So it was a challenge in a way that I learned a lot about my weaknesses. I learned a lot about how God works mightily, especially when you're in a place like Indonesia, like, and you're surrounded with Muslim people. I've seen the grace of God work in my life, and I've seen how God moves. I really learned a lot, that because compare if I compare my life in the Philippines, I don't see a whole lot of miracles, but it's in
Mm.
Indonesia that I've seen a lot of them. How God speaks to Muslim people, and how God moves. And when I pray, I felt like all my prayers are being answered, because God loves these people. So it's really amazing. And yeah, and it was the greatest feeling, because when I started raising funds for my trip to Indonesia, people are saying, "Why are you going there? Why do you want to go there? It's a Muslim country. Why do you want to go to a Muslim province even? Why do you even want to, like, you have to wear clothes that they're
Mhm.
that are, like contextually appropriate, yeah, you have to be learning all these rules and regulations. But deep inside my heart, it was because I have no choice but to love them, because God loves them.
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that was living there for 3 years. It was the best time of my life. I don't know how to say it, but it was the best time of my life.
I'm curious, as you went there planning to kind of be there for your whole life, and it sounds like it was a really impactful time. What did cause you to kind of change your mind and transition and leave
It's
after 3 years? Yeah.
actually, it wasn't me. Banda Aceh as you know, it was hit by tsunami, right? It was closed to any prior to the tsunami. There was civil war, and it was really closed to to the public. But after the tsunami, somehow the door opened for a lot of organizations to come in and help, right? Of course, they needed it to rebuild the province. And of course, Christians responded. A lot of Christian organizations came in and helped the province come back to life, including education. A lot of English schools got started because of missions organizations that have been involved. And during that time, I think so. It was 2006 that the tsunami happened, and I came in 2015. I started to live there 2015. It was already established, so established, and they roads are already uh, cleared, and everything is already built up again, and they started to close again. And when I was there, I was waiting for my work visa to come in. We were just hitting one wall after another with my application, my work visa application, because I went there as a student. I learned the language for 2 years, and then the next thing would be the work visa to work in the language school. But that was 2018 was the time when the doors are closing again. The immigration people are starting to probe on who are the expats that are working, and trying to look into what we have been doing. And they they my leaders thought that since it's becoming very hot, like the situation is becoming hot, it would be better for me to go back, because I couldn't get my visa. If I didn't go back and stubbornly stayed, they would have deported me, and it would have been a different story. So I had to come home, thinking that I will still go back,
Yeah.
but it didn't happen.
That just makes me think, Rio, of how the timing of you saying yes and listening to the Lord and responding to go, there was a specific window of time that was an opportunity. And while you thought it would be longer, that was the time that you could go for that specific window of time. And we don't know the doors of opportunity that are open, whether it's the neighbor who moves in just for a year or two beside us, or whether it's that we can go to a specific country or live in a certain place. But the fact that you responded and were there for those 3 years gave you that window of time that you could be there, and which was impactful for you as well as those that you were serving. So after your time in Indonesia, you were going back to the Philippines and you worked in the church then. Can you share with us a little bit about what it was like to be on a church staff on the sending side of sending missionaries, and what you learned from your time in that role?
Yes, it really helped me. My time in Indonesia really helped me, because when I came back, it so happened that our missions director resigned. And my pastor was like, "Oh, Rio, the Lord answered my prayer. Now that you're back, why don't I make you the missions director for our church?" Because I've served in that church. That's my home church. I've served there, and I know everybody, and they know me, and they supported me faithfully during that 3 years when I was in Indonesia. And it's for me, it's my time to give back to the church. So when I came back, usually when a missionary comes back, you need to have a debriefing first, and you need to have a member care kind of intervention first, and go through a rest, like a period of rest after that 3 years, because I didn't come home for 3 years, right? But I I quickly jumped in to the to the position as missions director for our church, Lighthouse Christian Community. And yeah, it gave me a whole lot of perspective and understanding of what missionaries go through, and the especially in the Philippines, the challenges in raising funds, and challenges of of course raising support, and just having that general well-being while in the field. And yeah, it was a blessing because it made me it gave me really uh, a real understanding of our missionaries, because during that time we 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 have, say, 7 missionaries on the field when I assumed the responsibility as missions director. So yeah, it just gave me a whole lot of perspective. And I somehow helped every time our missionaries come home. We gave them a proper welcoming, and we provided proper member care for our missionaries. We provided them opportunities to speak to the church, because for so for so many years, um, it, that hasn't been done. um, I don't know what happened uh, during the time that I was away, but it started, like the 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 mission purpose of the church started to dwindle, because there was a change of leadership. So something happened, and a lot of things happened in between. So when I assumed the role, somehow I gave it a new perspective, and brought back, okay, we need to have a missions month, or mission Sunday every quarter, just to get the congregation understand what missions is about and who are our missionaries on in the field. I gave them a voice, so they would share testimonies. We would do videos. We would do a whole lot of things. Yeah, so yeah, I really enjoy that too. It was not easy, but
Mm.
I enjoyed it.
For our weekly spotlight, we are focusing on opportunities to serve in East Asia and Oceania. There are many positions all throughout the region, from Thailand to the Philippines to Papua New Guinea. If you want to learn more about opportunities to serve in this region, visit the Teach Beyond Opportunity Board at teachbeyond.org/go.
And now back to the conversation with Rio. Rio, you're kind of talking about, the idea of what a missionary is and does and how a church sends, and there are certainly lots of pictures of what that can look like, but there are what you're describing is a healthy sending in wanting to support in many different ways and raising awareness of missions in the church. I'd love to know how your idea of what a quote unquote missionary is, maybe like the stereotype of what you had in your mind when your friend on the worship team came back from Indonesia and was talking about her experience. How did your idea of a missionary change from then all the way maybe up until now, as you've interacted with many different missionaries doing many different things? How's that changed over time?
Because our church is very missional, so we already have this idea that missionaries are that sending arm of the church. Okay, that if some people in the congregation cannot go, the missionary is the representative. And and for a person to go as a representative of the church, and as a representative of God, I think highly of them. I think that this is This being a missionary is the highest calling one can ever receive from God, you know. But because in the Philippines, there are churches that think, or not just not churches, some people who think that missionaries are supposed to be poor, supposed to be, you know, like it's the lowest of lows, because you need to ask people for money, just to go to the mission field, and it's a hard job, like no parent would want their children to be a missionary because they won't have any money, you know. But in our church it's different. So for us, growing up in our church, in my Christian faith, I knew that being a missionary is the best thing that one can ever experience in his or her lifetime. And so I carry it even today, that there are a lot of missionaries. It's true, there are a lot of missionaries who are discouraged, that when they go to the field and they're not supported by their home church, and people, like especially financial struggles, it's really sad. And so for me, um we need to change. We have to have that paradigm shift. Missionaries are God's generals, sending to these nations, and because God is with them. I experienced it. God was with me when I was there in Indonesia. I was all alone, but God was with me. And so I carry that even today. That whenever I talk to missionaries, our members who are going, I I just encourage them, because you're doing, um you're doing this thing, and your calling, you have to know that your calling is from God. Yeah, being a missionary is like, you are a representative of, if people at the congregation cannot go, you can go, but they can support you. I think missions is not just the missionary's responsibility. Missions is the church's responsibility. And it's like, like, the missionary is serves as the foot of the body, right? But there's a hand. The body needs the hand to support the feet, the head, the eyes, the mouth. So the church needs to be in support of missions, not just the missionary, not just the goers, but the givers as well. That's very important. Those people who are gifted to give, they should give. But I do understand that it's not, we cannot put missionaries in a pedestal, because we are all part of one body. And when God calls people to mission, it has to be the whole church in support of that. The challenges nowadays of sending missionaries, um, before, it's okay to just go and just be um, full-time missionary. But nowadays it's changing. People are going into business just to be able to do missions in a certain country. This is my experiences from the Philippines. We have a missionary who had to be a caregiver, so that she can go into the country and work and be a missionary. So there are a lot of ways that God can use, not just just be a full-time missionary, but even with what we're doing in Teach Beyond, being a teacher and being intentional in doing missions is very important. And business as missions nowadays are becoming more popular, but I do really now see that, um, what we're doing in Teach Beyond, sending teachers, is very, very significant, um, in the mission. of the church.
Yeah, definitely lots of open doors of opportunity for education as missions for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, as you're talking about all these different ways the missionaries are perceived and what they can do as they go and serve overseas and serve in different cultures and contexts. I'm curious, how did you first learn about Teach Beyond? Who introduced you to Teach Beyond?
Actually, Tosca Nathan, my RVP, we go way back. We've been friends in the church, my home church in Lighthouse in Manila. Actually, we're both in the worship team together. So,
Man,
and
that worship team, that's
yes,
amazing.
and well, and then she left. Um, for some time, I didn't see her. It was then that she got married, and then we met each other again with another organization where she was part of that organization, and I became a missionary of that organization. And so our paths crossed again for the second time. But then again, the organization folded in Manila, and so we lost connection again. And then now that I'm here in Australia, and I knew that she's now she has lived in Australia for years, but I'm in Perth. She lives in south on the south side. I'm in west, and she lives in the south.
Yeah, I was gonna say we need to make sure that everyone knows just because you are both in Australia does not
Yes.
mean you are neighbors.
Nope, nope.
Different time zones.
Yes. She reached out to me through that email, and she said, "Oh, Rio, I wanted to talk to you about something." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I'm, of course, happy to connect with her. And then that's when she told me about Teach Beyond,
Yeah.
that she's part of that Teach Beyond, and she's building up her team. And she talked to me about it. She sent me all the videos, like all the Teach Beyond videos, and she said, "You just watch it and see what the Lord will say to you, and then get back to me." And then I realized, when I started watching the videos, it just resonated in my heart. I worked as a teacher for 7 years. That's why when Tosca was telling me about Teach Beyond and sent me those videos, it really resonated in my heart, because my heart is still in missions, and teaching. Why not? Yes, I just said yes, yes to it all, because it is an opportunity. It is really an opportunity. Being a teacher is being in, you know having that connection in the lives of your students, and that opportunity to change lives, and let alone opportunity to share life, Jesus Christ, to them, right? So it did resonate in my heart, and at first I thought, I'm so excited. It's global. It's a global organization, and how wonderful is that? That you can be part of this global organization that uses education, and then understands the missional effect, the missional work in there. So, if I had known Teach Beyond before, I would have joined before
Yes. Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
teacher.
Yeah. Well, Rio, I love hearing your passion about education as missions. And can you tell us a quick story of how you've seen the impact of reaching the nations through education specifically?
Well, just this recently, we started the Sparrow Project in Manila, and we started training. The Sparrow Project is it is reaching out to underprivileged schools, training teachers um, in the transformational education, right?
Hmm.
And we just had our first cohort trained last August. And so immediately in that four, actually it's only a 2-day training. That was the initial training that we had. We just met these teachers from three schools, and I saw how the program that we have really impacted the lives of these teachers. They themselves saw, the somehow they had a paradigm shift in their minds, that they themselves um, becoming more intentional in sharing in bringing the gospel in all the subjects that they teach. It just somehow, like light bulbs were turning in the minds of these teachers. And there was one teacher of, okay, so these are Christian schools, okay, these are teachers from a Christian school. And there was one teacher, she came from a Christian background. We were expecting all of these teachers are Christians because they are teaching in a Christian school. And so and a part of the program is, we have Bibles on their tables, because we refer to the Bible every so often during the program. And this teacher, we thought that, she already knows, okay, let's turn to Jeremiah chapter 5, right? And then turn to Isaiah chapter 53. So we thought, the facilitators, all of us thought that everybody knew where the books of the Bibles are and where the chapters are. But at the end of the session, she was telling us that, yes, she came from a Christian background, but she never read the Bible. And that was the first time she felt, she even cried when she was sharing this to us, because she felt like, why don't I know this? Why I thought I was a Christian. Why don't I know where the books of the Bibles are? Why? What? She was just asking herself. We felt her frustration. And the good thing there is, the her other colleagues, her other teachers that were on part of what on her table, instead of laughing at her, because it is sometimes we laugh at these things, but the teachers that are with her, they said, don't worry, we will support you, this is where it is. And they started helping this colleague of theirs. They didn't even know that she didn't know how to read the Bible. So it was an eye-opening experience for them, that they need to support one another. They need to support this co-teacher of theirs. And for us facilitators, we somehow realize that we cannot assume that everyone knows how to read the Bible, and let alone understand what transformational education is all about.
Yeah, yeah.
So it,
That's a
it was,
lifelong experience, right, of understanding that more fully and learning more about how we can authentically live out the gospel and live out our faith.
yeah. So we learned from that. As the facilitators, we learned from that. And that teacher was really touched, and somehow it changed her life right there and then. And now the cohort continues on to be trained. It's a one long year process of teacher training. And so she continues to learn with us.
And I'm guessing her whole class and the school community are impacted through that too. So there's that ripple effect of impact for sure.
That's the goal. Yes, that's it.
I love hearing that story. I love hearing about how God is moving and how God is shaping one person and impacting more and more people through that. Um, I'm curious, as we've talked about your story and kind of where you started from knowing about ministry, missions, and wanting to serve there and where you are now, is there anything you wish you could go back and tell your younger self to kind of, with the perspective you have now, something that'd be encouraging to them?
I wish I knew what transformational education is all about back then. It would have changed how I taught, how I related to my students, um, how I became intentional in how I taught ESL, and yeah, because I've learned a lot since I joined Teach Beyond, and I'm continuing to learn. How that transformational education needs to be in the classroom for all subjects, not just for one subject, not just for a Bible class, but for all subjects. It can be implemented, it can be done, it can be infused and applied. So yeah, I'm learning that now, and if I'm going to be teaching, actually, I've started a ministry in our church, another ESL ministry, and now I'm applying that.
Yeah, I love hearing that. I love hearing how you're applying those things even today.
And it's a good reminder that this is all an ongoing story, right? I love hearing how God's led you through these different seasons and chapters in different places, and there's still more to be written. So we're grateful that you're serving with Teach Beyond and also just looking around you for opportunities to reach out to your local community. So thanks for sharing all about these different parts of your life, Rio.
Rio, yeah, thank you so much for sharing. We have one last question we ask all of our guests before we let them go. And that is, what's one thing that's changed in your life? So this can be something really big and serious, or something small and maybe not so serious.
A
So
forewarning, mine is very light today. So
so I'll go first, and then Heather, and then you get to go last, so you can have a little bit of time to think about it. So mine is also definitely on the lighter side. Is I started reading Father Brown Mysteries, which
Hmm,
is an old book series from G.K. Chesterton, kind of like
nice.
Sherlock Holmes light.
Cool.
I don't know, not light, like kind of like Sherlock Holmes. So I'm just starting them, and they've been really fun to read, and I know it's been on my list for a long time.
That's cool. Well, for me, what's changing my life lately is using the scheduling feature for posts and chats in Teams. So I've known about this for a while, but it's just been changing my life more lately when I think of something and I'm like, I don't need to send that or post that quite yet. I can just schedule it to post at a certain time on Microsoft Teams. We use this platform for all of our communication and Teach Beyond. Or if it's like I want to make sure that I remind people like, "Oh, you have an hour to do this at this certain time," then you can, have that scheduled to go out and you don't have to be thinking about it at that 1 hour time. So, that's been really helpful. I don't know if either of you have used that feature, but it's really really helpful. Rio, what's been changing your life lately?
Well, I'm learning how to drive.
Oh,
So
That is a life
exciting.
I've
changing.
never I've never driven. Well, when I was in Indonesia, I learned how to drive a motorbike.
Okay.
I've never driven anything my whole life. Bicycle, yes, but one with a motor. In Indonesia, I learned how to drive a motorbike because it's important. But now I need to learn how to drive a car. And so
Yes.
it is life changing, and
Yeah.
I'm already 53 years old, and I'm just starting to learn how to
Yeah.
drive. And
That's
what
great.
one praise report, somebody gave me a car, a second
Oh,
hand
wow.
car, and so
That's
I have no
awesome.
choice but to
Now's
learn.
the time.
Yes.
That's great. Lifelong learners, they say that's a great posture as a teacher, right? That we be lifelong learners. So that's great. You have that opportunity learning
Yes.
how to drive while also learning about transformational education, right?
Yeah.
Oh, very good. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Rio. We really appreciate this conversation.
Well, thank you guys for inviting me and allowing me to share.
It is amazing to see how God has shaped Rio all along the way. I love what she said at the very beginning about how, with all of her different moves and places she lived, she always has felt at home wherever she is, as long as she's at the center of where God wants her to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rio, Heather, and I serve with Teach Beyond, a mission organization reaching the nations through education.
Want to learn more and get involved? Visit teachbeyond.org or follow us on social media.
To help more people find the podcast and hear about Teach Beyond, we'd love it if you would leave a rating or review and share the show with a friend. Be sure you subscribe or following the show on the platform where you listen so you never miss an episode.
And as always, you can reach us at podcast@teachbeyond.org. We'll see you next week.